I'm Laura Wellhite, and Allison Dorfman and I are going to talk to you about low vision and blindness. This disability is not very prominent, so I imagine a lot of you have not worked with children that receive services due to visual impairment. Vision plays a major role when children are learning. A high percentage of learning occurs through visual activities such as exploring the environment, observation, assimilation, and other experiences. A visual impairment is used to describe the consequence of an eye condition or disorder. The IDEA defines visual impairment as an impairment in vision that, even with correction, adversely affects a child's educational performance. The term includes both partial sight and blindness. Children with visual impairments can learn exactly what a child without a visual impairment can learn, they just have different ways of learning. This presentation will help you know the difference between low vision and blindness, what to look for to see if your students are having troubles with their vision, the causes of visual impairments, and how to best meet your students' needs. It is important to know if a student has vision loss, since children can have learning delays due to poor eyesight. Some students might just need glasses, but other children with severe visual impairments will more than likely need tools and materials to keep up with their peers. I want to get started by going over a term that some people might not be familiar with, which is visual acuity. Visual acuity measures how people see details and shape. This can be assessed by the smallest object that can be seen at a specified distance, such as letters on a Snellen eye chart. If an individual has 2200 vision, the smallest letter that the individual can see at 20 feet could be seen by someone with typical vision at about 200 feet. A child with 2200 or less has a visual impairment. Now I'm going to talk about the differences between legal blindness, functional blindness, and low vision, which is also called partially sighted. A person that is legally blind has visual acuity of 2200 or less in the better eye, even with glasses. Someone with legal blindness might have some usable vision. Here's a brief clip of what a legally blind person might see. A child that has functional blindness would meet the definition of blindness by an eye doctor or another medical doctor such as a neurologist. A person with functional blindness would rely on tactile and auditory senses to learn. A child with CVI, which is cortical visual impairment, would more than likely have functional blindness. I will talk about CVI later on. A child that has low vision would have a visual acuity between 2070 and 2200 with correction. With optical aids, a modified environment, and specialized services, a child that has low vision could use their vision to learn. A student between the ages of 3 and 21 is eligible for services if they have been identified as having a visual impairment by a medical professional, their visual problems are causing an adverse effect on their education, there is an educational need identified, visual acuity is 20/70 or less, restricted vision of 50 degrees or less, degenerative condition that could result in loss of vision in the future. They might have a neurological visual impairment, or they could have a certain eye condition, such as a detached retina, which could put a student in temporary placement depending on their condition. So some signs to look for in your students to see if they're having trouble seeing is if they have crossed eyes, eyes that do not move together in following object. They might have unequal pupils. They might repeat shutting an eye or covering an eye. They might also have unusual clumsiness. They might bump into things around the room, or they might trip. You might also notice a student holding a book or toy too close to their face, and they also might just avoid activities that require adequate vision. The American Printing House for the Blind has an annual report of students ages 3 to 21 who are legally blind and receiving services. The data is used to decide on how much federal funds are needed to be spent in each state. Students that have visual impairments who need services have been receiving funds since 1879. That was when Congress signed the Act to promote the education of the blind. The funds provide accessible educational materials to students. In 2016, a total of 63,357 students in the United States were receiving services due to a visual impairment. Close to $18 million was spent on educating students with visual impairments. Here is a graph of the amount of students that qualified for services under IDEA in Illinois from 2008 until the 2018-2019 school year. As you can see, there has been a decrease. In 2008, there were 1,199 students with a visual impairment, and last school year, there were 1,058 students. The decrease might have to do with parents being educated about preventable causes of visual impairments. During the 2018 and 2019 school year, there were a total of 297,960 students in Illinois that had a disability and qualified for services. We are going to take a look at the prevalence of intellectual disability, specific learning disability, autism spectrum disorder, other health impairments, in comparison to visual impairments. Out of those 5, specific learning disability was the most prevalent, with 100,659 students. 38,409 students had other health impairments. 27,131 students had autism spectrum disorder. 15,252 students had an intellectual disability, and as I mentioned, 1,058 had a visual impairment. The 5 main visual impairments in the United States are cortical visual impairment, retinopathy of prematurity, optic nerve hypoplasia, albinism, and optic nerve atrophy. Cortical visual impairment is a neurological disorder that is caused by damage to the pathways between the eyes and the brain. This is a condition in which the brain does not process visual information in an appropriate manner. This can be due to trauma or malformation of brain structures. Most people with CVI have normal eyes, but they may have a variety of visual impairments, such as not being able to see in a noisy room or identify faces. CVI can be caused when a person does not get enough oxygen to their brains. It can also be caused by head injury, seizures, or infection. More and more children are being diagnosed with CVI each year, which is due to the advanced ability to diagnose. Now we are going to watch a video about a boy named Omer who has CVI.
Perkins logo on screen. Omer and his brother Demir play cards in the living room.
My name is Omer and I'm 8 years old.
I am Burju Sara. I'm the mother of Omer and Demir.
I'm Matt. I'm the father of those 2 double troubles.
Omer has CVI and cerebral palsy.
Photo montage of Omer.
When they were born, they were 9 weeks premature, and they found that Omer has a brain injury. He was like a blind kid, but I knew he wasn't blind because he was looking around, seeing things, but it was very slow reaction. So a lot of people question his cognitive skills because vision assessment through Perkins School for the Blind. Ellen came to our house, and that moment, it was like a sparkle in our lives. Mom, I met with someone, and she said that it's going to get better.
Ellen Mazel, CVI Project Manager.
CVI stands for cortical or cerebral visual impairment, and it's a brain-based visual impairment where the visual processing centers or the visual pathways of the brain are not functioning correctly.
Student with CVI in Perkins classroom.
So it's really an issue of visual recognition. Children don't understand what they're looking at. The CVI is caused by many different kinds of damage to many different areas of the brain. Children with cortical visual impairment may see the world like a kaleidoscope.
Brightly colored kaleidoscope graphic.
It's a swirling mass of color and light. And because the world is so confusing visually, they really act as if they have total blindness.
He was fortunate enough at a young age, they noticed those things and we managed to get the diagnosis, and then we can focus on the right approach. Until you get that clarification, you lose days, months, even years.
Ed Basso, Perkins Superintendent.
People can't see CVI. There's a lack of awareness around it in both the medical community and the educational communities, and so families are struggling to get someone to listen to them about something they feel or see about their child. They know something's not right, and so it's a huge challenge to get, one, a public awareness out there about it. We need to make it more visible for people.
Dr. Lockby Maravit, Mass Eye Near.
A lot of these children often don't get the right diagnosis because they think that maybe it's a psychological issue, or maybe it's ADHD, or maybe it might be another developmental factor. So unfortunately, that child goes off on a completely different tangent than was appropriate, simply because they didn't consider the visual impairment at the level of the brain rather than just considering the eye.
We started working together, and she really told me what to do. When she was telling us one thing, we were taking it a step further, and it started working. And I started looking at my face for the first time, and then his dad, and then his brother, and then he started smiling. Life started changing. And then I started going to Perkins School for the Blind for the infant toddler group.
Aerial shot of Perkins campus.
It felt like we are not aliens. Like, we are not lonely. There are people like us struggling and trying to understand their kids.
Perkins absolutely needs to take a leadership role right now with CVI, and I would say the number one reason is students and families. This is an opportunity to step up and use our expertise. Families and students can't wait, as evidenced by the amount of contact we're having from families and from professionals around the country, really internationally, about this issue. And Perkins is ready. Perkins has to have critical partners in order to do this work, and we invite partners to come in and join the fight.
It's not just going to be on the medical research side. It's going to be educators in the field. It's going to be legislators in the field. It has to be parents who are also stakeholders who know what their children are going through. If it doesn't happen in Perkins, I don't know where it can happen.
He's doing fantastic now. He's academically, with same level with his peers. He's reading, he's writing.
Magic happens every day, and we see change in the lives of the students and families we serve.
Photos of a smiling Omer and his family. To learn more about how Perkins helps parents and educators support children with CVI, visit perkins.org/CVI. This video was made